Most epic battles of the Bible. Part 1. The battle between two biblical beasts. The rabbinical tradition tells us about this battle that will take place after Armageddon, in which first there will be a war between good and evil, heaven against hell, Jesus Christ against Satan. While all this is going on, there will be a battle between two very powerful beasts. We are talking about Leviathan, the behemoth. These beasts have an enormous power that no one imagines or knows. One of these beasts dominates the earth, and the other dominates the seas. According to some biblical stories, this battle will only end with the power of God will destroy them both to serve them in a banquet after Armageddon. These beasts can be found in the book of Job, specifically in Job 40 and 41. According to the stories and religions, this battle will be of colossal proportions. Comment follow me for part 2.
This creator is incredibly creative. He spoke about the two beasts. You can find them in the book of Job 40 and 41. But when you go and you look at the book of Job 40 and 41, what you have in this situation is the time frame when Job had questioned God, like, why are you doing all this bullshit to me? Why is all this stuff happening? Have I not just served you and all that? And after God realizes, after he loses he wins the bet against the Satan, and he then admonishes Job for even questioning why all these things have happened to him, and then starts to get on Job's case and say that, did you create the earth? Did you make the lightning? Did you make the wind, the mountains, and all of that? And in 40, he talks about, did you make the behemoth? And when you look at the description of the behemoth, it is most likely, and the consensus is that it's talking about an elephant. And if you think about their time frame, an elephant would have, well, still is the largest land animal that we know of. And it talks about how he has a tail like cedar, and his legs are like iron and strong, and it eats the grass and all these sort of things like the oxen. So it's talking about more than likely an elephant in 40. And then in 41, the Leviathan is most likely talking about a whale, the smoke coming out of his nostrils, the thickness of his skin, the huge size of his mouth, and how their instruments at that time frame cannot penetrate the whale's hide, and all these sort of things. So most likely it's talking about, a humpback whale or a blue whale. Blue whales are rare in the Mediterranean, but you can find other whales like humpbacks and things of that nature that do sometimes go into the Mediterranean as well. So it's most likely it's talking about a whale, but he's admonishing Job, and at no point in Job does he talks about those two animals coming to blow, but he's just talking about the fact that only God can subdue those two animals. Only God can make them as a pet. Only God can pierce their hide. It's not talking about the fact that God will. Now, he's taking that and moving it over into Revelations, where in Revelations it talks about three beasts. And those three beasts are actually in collusion with each other and never go to war with each other. They do not fight each other. So that makes the whole video bogus as hell right off the bat. The first beast, the one that comes from the sea, is a representation of the Antichrist. And this Antichrist is what's written in Revelation, which was written around 96 to 120 CE, is John writing about the myth at the time that they feared Nero would return. This is why the number 666 is actually Nero's name, Neron Caesar, Neon Kaiser in the Greek, and Nero Caesar in the Latin, which the number becomes 616. This is why you'll see those two numbers as the mark of the beast. But they're talking about Nero coming back as this Antichrist and having the seven the seven crowns or seven heads or whatever it is, seven horns, because Rome was known to have been built on seven hills. And so Nero coming back with the Parthians and taking back the Roman Empire because of this myth that he did not actually die, and that Rome was the beast, was the second. What Rome is also the second beast, and this is the beast of the land, and the beast of the land is representing the prophet of the Antichrist. So they're in collusion with each other. He's the prophet of the Antichrist, and this was placed on the imperial cult initially, as far as who it identified. because the imperial cult wanted to force everybody to worship Caesar. Going back to the first beast, worship the Antichrist, worship Nero, because Nero proclaimed himself to be the god Apollo, proclaimed himself to be the sun god, proclaimed himself to be a god. He's one of the few. I think Caligula was the other one who called himself a god. And Nero supposedly threw himself on his sword and at age 30 and he died, but also the healing. This is what you won't get unless you really study deeply. After Nero supposedly died in 68, Rome went through three different rulers. Those three different rulers created pretty much civil war throughout the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire thought that it would fall, but then Vespasian and the Flavian family came in and stabilized the Roman Empire. So when during that year that they thought the Roman Empire was over, they thought Rome had suffered a mortal wound. Sounds familiar? But then the mortal wound was healed by Nero. By Vespasian. And so the Roman Empire then was able to be sustained again. So that is the mortal wound to which they were talking about. And seeing as how this book is written after Vespasian, after Titus, during the time frame of Domitian, most likely, Christians feared Nero coming back. And since Nero was the first one that was propagandized as to be against Christians, they feared that he would come back and he would persecute Christians. Even though Domitian was persecuting the hell out of Christians as well, they feared that he would come back and he would be even worse, because Nero was also referred to as the beast. He was so cruel to not just Christians, but to many groups. He was also called a beast as well. Tertullian and other authors, historians called him such. Sarcerin called him a beast. Antiope called him a beast. So they thought Nero would return. So he was the representation of the beast from the sea. And because the Parthians were great seafarers, beast from the sea. The third beast was the harlot who rode on, the harlot of Babylon, the whore of Babylon, who rode on a beast. And if you notice, each one of these beasts are symbolic of what was written in Daniel. So the author also understood Daniel and used the bear and the leopard and the lion as representations of these beasts, and also knew of Rome and the seven hills and all these different things, and the imperial cult. So these beasts never fought each other in Revelations like this guy says, but these beasts were in collusion with one another. And yes, according to their story, the beast will be defeated by Jesus and his armies. But this is just fan fiction written uh, concerning their fear of Nero returning, because Jesus said he will return before this generation is over and the world will come to an end and all this sort of thing. But then Jesus didn't come. So after Jesus didn't come, guess what happened? People started changing it. Most of you who think that the office of the papacy is the beast, you do so because of Uriah Smith, a Seventh-day Adventist, who proclaimed that the office of the papacy was the mark of the beast, because they called themselves the vice regent of God, of the Son of God, or the vicar of Christ. And they made that add up to the number 666, but that's not an official title. But they wanted to put the Pope in there making. But they also said that Protestants were the second beast, because the Protestants will make a deal with the first beast, which is the office of the papacy. So you're believing that based on the Seventh-day Adventists. And then and they also said the Seventh-day Adventists said that the Protestants were the beast because they did not worship on Sunday. They changed. They didn't worship on that Friday night to Saturday night. They changed the Sabbath. So that was also them being the mark of the beast. And of course, people have said it about Ronald Reagan. They've said it about the supercomputer in Belgium. They've said it about getting the RFID chips under your skin. They say it about everything because it's so vague that it can be applied to everything. But most of the time it's applied to governments, because the governments are the ones who rule your religion and changes your religion. And the futurists say that it's going to be a religion that's coming, a government that's coming, that's going to reestablish the Roman Empire. So it's a bunch of bullshit. So So always remember you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is not